righty. Welcome, everybody, and welcome back to In the Company of Charity podcast. My name is Sister Liz, and I'm here as always with my favorite co-host in crime, Sister Elizabeth Grime.
Elizabeth, that's right.
How are you doing?
Elizabeth. I'm doing good. How about you?
Pretty good. Give us an update, because you're in the midst of giving a retreat on St. Louis.
Yeah. I'm in Emmitsburg, Maryland, the home of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton and the Daughters of Charity, Sisters of Charity Federation. Go back and check out some podcasts earlier that help you understand all that relationship. I'm here giving a retreat. Every year we make an 8-day retreat, all the Daughters of Charity all over the world. And so I'm directing or guiding a retreat for our sisters about St. Louise de Marillac, who I just, over the years have fallen in love with. And even more so, giving this retreat has really helped me to delve more into what an incredibly gifted, radical, insightful, prophetic woman she was. Yeah, she's really, really underrated, I think. What she was able, it kind of goes with our podcast today, because we're going to talk a little bit about St. Louise. I think that because we were the first community outside the cloister in the 1600s, 1633, she had the courage to kind of gather these young peasant girls. Some of them couldn't read or write, and they were just out there. And I was saying today, as a matter of fact, in my reflection with the sisters, I hadn't really thought about how Louise not just brought the sisters out of the cloister, but she actually opened the community up. She opened religious life. She opened discernment. She opened the call of religious life to women who might never have thought they could do it because they weren't financially, you had to have a dowry in those days. You had to be somewhat educated. And these women wouldn't have been any of that. And yet she invited them into her home and said, you too have a call. You too have a mission to serve God and the poor. It just really struck me, when we talk about inclusion and diversity. She was out there in the beginning with all of that. She had some characters living with her.
And those poor country girls who came in who wanted to serve God also.
Yeah, and they were kind of rough edges, but they became very holy women. And the other is she saw them as women who would take leadership roles, right? And she wasn't going to be around forever. These young women who were coming to her in the early days, they were going to have to step up and be the sister servants and be the administrators and do those jobs that, again, they would never have been able to aspire to. So in that way, I just think she's remarkable. Just amazing. Yeah.
Well, and one thing that strikes me, and this relates to the interview we're about to hear, is that, when we have saints in the church, we know that the reason the church lifts them up is because their life is a model of holiness. And that's where that newness of the sisters don't have to be in the cloister to be holy. They can be out in the streets and serving the poor, and not only that, we can have lay people who have this spirit, who our spirit is too big and too universal to be kept in the consecrated women side of things, or even the priests and brothers.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Louise started there, right? She started in the confraternities of charity with St. Vincent de Paul, the lay women of the parish, who were going out and being of service. And so, yeah, it's all there, all of the workings in the early 1600s, 1620s, 1630s. All of the pieces were there to have something remarkable happen between consecrated life and lay ministry before the church ever thought of doing anything like this. Vincent and Louise were saying lifestyle differences, yes. Ability to serve God and the poor, exactly the same, right? There's no boundaries in that. So yeah, so it's really great. So you lived in Chicago, and that's where our interview for today with
Yes.
Originate. So you give us a little intro here, Sister
So we're
Liz.
going to hear from a guest interviewer. You all remember Sister Salvatrice, and so she's back with us. She's interviewing Francine, who's the mission integration person from Marillac St. Vincent's in Chicago. Great lady, and among other things, she shares a little bit about this effort of creating an exchange through video with our sisters in various countries in Africa. And so very cool to hear about. We don't want to give it all away, but to hear about what they did. And we are going to put the link in the show notes. It's called Sister to Sister. You can look that up on YouTube, and Marillac St. Vincent's has their great channel there on YouTube. So check out all the good work that they are doing. And thanks to Sister Salvatrice and Francine for allowing us to be a part of this conversation, because they're just powerful women up there making moves in Chicago.
Yeah. And it's such a good example of the legacy of St. Vincent and St. Louise, the lay women, African-American women, women of color in Chicago, teaming up with, through video, our sisters in Africa, sharing their stories, sharing their experiences, seeing what's different about one another, but what's the same about one another. But for the first time, just experiencing being with people who they may not have thought that they were there, that the African sisters, and they had no idea what kind of work was being done in America, and the women of Marillac St. Vincent's, no idea about the strength of the community in Africa. So again, we're not going to tell you much more, but just to give you an idea, just really pulls it all together. And I just think that lay and religious consecrated women, women, society of apostolic life, all of that complicated stuff just gets brought under one umbrella. And Louise and Vincent were just, trailblazers in this. And we should be very grateful for that legacy.
Absolutely. And as a reminder, we are on Spotify now. So if you are listening to us on Spotify, thank you. Glad that you're with us. And we also are on Instagram. So Company of Charity Podcast on Instagram, and send us some messages. Reviews are always appreciated, and we'd love to hear from you. So enjoy this episode.
Salvatrice, and today I am in the company of Francine Shalunas, who is the mission director at Marillac St. Vincent Family Services, which is a sponsored work of the Daughters of Charity in Chicago, Illinois. Welcome, Francine.
Thank you, Sister Salvatrice.
I am so excited to be talking to you today, especially because we are going to talk about the St. Louise Day festivities. So why don't I first give you an opportunity to just share a little bit about how you got connected to Marillac St. Vincent and the Vincentian charism.
I guess really it probably starts back when I went to college. I went to DePaul University, and as you probably well know, it's a Vincentian-sponsored Vincentian Institute, and I got involved in Vincentian studies, and on my own, as part of the curriculum, we had to take theology courses. But I learned very early that St. Vincent was a saint who worked with the poor. And I didn't grow up very wealthy. I didn't grow up wealthy at all. And I knew that a lot of the things that the students were involved with when I was in college back in the 60s were things that resonated with me in terms of my heart and how I lived, how my parents served and what have you. So that was my initial introduction, and continued to be the way that I learned about Sister Louise a little later on through the Vincentian charism, being a part of the university, and then later on in my life serving on the board of St. Thomas Seminary, which at the time was a facility that served both lay and ladies as well as the Vincentian males, the seminarians. So, and that's when I really started to get to know a little bit about Louise and her relationship with Vincent, and more importantly, about her own journey as a spiritual person, I guess. So that was my introduction and how I got involved. And then I guess in talking about how I came to be a part of the mission here, I had retired and thought I would never again work.
You thought you were done.
I surely did. But again, that's the one thing you learn about Vincentianism. Once they get a hold of you, they never let you go, never ever. And so literally a week after I retired from DePaul, excuse me, I got a call from one of the Vincentian priests asking me if I might be interested in continuing to work and doing some kind of mission work. And long story short, I did send my resume in, and I guess I started in January of 2018 now. It's I can't believe it's 3.5 years. And I thought, okay, I'll do this for a year or two and then I'll be on my happy way. But it really is not just because I'm the director for mission integration, but it really is a mission in this period in my life in terms of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And so one of the privileges obviously is I get to celebrate Louise.
Yes. And you have a very unique position as the Director of Mission Integration. In the sponsored works, we have a Director of Mission Integration, but this is the first time that this position has been filled by someone who is not a daughter of charity.
Yes. And I know in part that to the extent that I was attractive to the organization, and I assume the daughters,
Yes.
Is because of the relationship that I've had with the Vincentian community over the last now 54 years. God, I'm dating myself. And I have, since I was a student, I've always said I am a Vincentian. And so having been involved and engrossed in the spirituality of St. Vincent, it was a natural wedding with Louise.
Yeah.
So
Excellent. Oh, wonderful. And so one of the focuses that I wanted to have you share with people about today is so we celebrate, as part of our founder, the feast of St. Louise de Marillac, which we usually recognize and do some kind of celebration or some kind of recognition, learn a little bit about her. But this year at Marillac St. Vincent, you did something really unique and wonderful. And so I'd love for you to just share that with people and tell people, how did you come up with the idea? Well, first tell them what it was, and then how did you come up with the idea?
So what it was a way of introducing our community to daughters of charity outside of the few, honestly, now that they know, but more importantly, to expand their relationship with daughters outside of just the daughters here in Chicago specifically. But more importantly, because this is a community that's predominantly women of color, I was fairly certain that they had never seen any religious women of color, and specifically daughters of charity. And again, because I've had such a long-standing relationship with DePaul, I know a few daughters there. I've grown to have relationships with them, but beyond that, I knew all of the Vincentian priests. And so I approached one of them in particular and said, I really would like to introduce our community here at Marillac St. Vincent Family Services to some daughters of charity of color. And I know that we have outreaches every place, and I'm sure there must be something in Africa or someone in Africa that I could maybe contact, and perhaps in the age of Zoom, get something going. I didn't really have a formalized idea other than I wanted our community to somehow be connected with a community of daughters of color. And so I tapped my network, and sure enough, I was through one of the sisters that I know from DePaul, who is not a daughter of Charity, and then the Vincentian priest who has worked in Africa, but he really works more in China. Both of them connected me with others who were able to then connect me with a total of 8 daughters of Charity from Africa, from Ethiopia, from Nigeria, from Ghana, and we
Was it Kenya too?
and
Kenya?
and Kenya, yes, and Kenya, and I was able to have an initial discussion with them to tell them we're celebrating the Feast of St. Louise, and I would love for you to be able to share with our community what you do and how you do it and why you do it, and more importantly, to let them see that the spirituality of Louise resonates throughout this world, but particularly with women that look like the women here in our organization. And they were even more excited than I was. And as a result, we had that initial Zoom conversation, and I had just 2 wonderful guys here in our community who helped with the technology. And from that initial conversation that I had with the 8 of them, I then decided I wanted to get the community more actively involved. So I had a sense, based on that initial conversation with the daughters in Africa, of what their various vocations were, where their missions were, what they were doing, and what have you. So I tried to look within our community to say, if we had a conversation among us, who would be the likely people or the likely folk here in our community who could have, excuse me, who could have a meaningful conversation with them about what they do and what we do. And so I chose 8 of the women here, and to sit and have conversations with 8 of the 8 of the daughters. And we made a video. I called it Sister to Sister, and it was just remarkable. It was not only because there was clearly joy among the daughters who had never experienced us here in the U.S. in terms of community, and they were saying, surprisingly, we've never seen people that look like us doing the work that we do in the U.S. And our community, the blessing that came from them seeing and conversing with them and learning that despite the fact that we think we don't have a lot, there are others who have a lot less, who are doing so much more in so many ways. And so it was just a very humbling experience, but also a very overwhelmingly blessed experience for all of us.
And it was an incredible video during the feast day celebration that we had over Zoom, and for the agency, we got to see sort of a highlights reel, right? About like a 35-minute video that pulled some of the highlights. But you actually had, like, was it 4 hours?
Almost 5 hours.
Almost 5 hours of content.
That was condensed down into a little more than a half an hour for the presentation. We only had an hour for our entire celebration.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to make sure that I had the opportunity to allow an intern that I had over the year, who was a Franciscan brother, to give essentially he gave a reflection at the beginning, and he's from Africa. And so I've gotten one comment back thus far from the sisters there, who actually saw the video because she was excited, and she remarked that it was like seeing her younger brother, and it really it swelled her heart, she said.
The whole experience, as someone who was sort of just a passive recipient of getting to see the results of it, it's so overwhelming the beauty of the connection and the differences and the sameness, you know, and such a powerful experience for those of us who just got to kind of peek in on it and hear those highlights from the conversation. And one of the things that I heard in the conversation was the sisters talking about, you know, their schooling experience and having classrooms with students of different ages and things like that. And then the women who are employed with Marillac St. Vincent talking about their experience, because we also do early childhood education here as they did there. And some of the things that, you know, some things are the same, you know, so little aggravations that the teachers experienced are the same no matter which country you were talking from. So getting to see those similariries. And
it was kind of cute where one of the questions that our women put to the sisters was, do you ever get frustrated? And they talked about the very same thing that they get frustrated about. And they said, you know, when we deal with our children, we deal with the entire family, with the parents especially, and that's always an issue with our teachers and their interactions that sometimes the parents, as you all know, they are very protective of their kids. And when you've got 400 or 500 kids in and out and around in the community, it can get very difficult for our community, especially during COVID. I mean, there's so many things that are restrictive anyway, but the tensions build up and what have you. So, and I liked when they were asked, well, what do you do? And one of them said, I sing, I sing. And at the end of the program, that was the beauty of it. They, about 3 or 4 of them, I think they were all from Ghana. Okay, all right. Yeah, I think they were all from Ghana, had a song that they sang. It was just, as I said, it was so beautiful. And I just keep saying it was humbling because it's not, it was so open in terms of their giving and exchanging. And it gave me even a greater respect and love for the women who work here because it meant so much to them. They sent me notes saying, just thank you for choosing me, for being a part of that. Because in all honesty, most of them don't get outside of their own community here. And so to literally spend those few hours that they did in Africa was probably a trip they'll never make in their lives, physically, but I think in terms of experientially and emotionally, and just the bonding that went on is something that I know they will remember the rest of their lives.
Yeah, and people have been talking about it. People who participated and people who got to view the short video. And
I got a big cookie out of it.
A big cookie with Louise's face on it, right? Just really, really so well received all across the agency. Everybody was just so delighted and impressed with the exchange and the sharing, the genuine sharing. Another similarity that came out was with the sisters in Africa talking about their home visiting program and having to go into the homes of the families and some of the challenges that presented. Yes. And one of the participants that you had selected, LaRonda, who's the program manager for our home visiting program. Yeah. So there's a lot of connection there. Oh yes, some of the same things that you experience, we experience.
Absolutely.
And being able to make those connections and see, I mean, home visiting is such a very Vincentian thing to do.
That and hospitality.
Yeah.
They like to eat.
Right.
Like to eat.
And if I remember right, in addition to singing, cooking was the other thing that came up.
Yes, it did.
And it came up across the board.
Both sides.
Both ends of the world,
yes,
right?
It did.
Cooking and singing.
Yeah. The difficulty in all of this now is, what's next, Francine? What are you going to do? Right. And I actually already have some thoughts, so we'll see.
Great.
We'll see.
Great. Well, and you said a little bit already about kind of what made you want to do this and where it was coming from. Can you expand on that a little bit? Like, why was this so important? Why was this such an important thing for our staff here at Marillac and just in general? Why did this matter?
You know, Sister Salvatrice, looking at what's happening in our society right now, especially in terms of people of color, and particularly my people, Black people, there are so many things that one would equate with negativity, with a loss to some extent of self-esteem, and so many things that don't bolster the spirit and bolster the heart. And our women in particular have so much that they give, and often, unfortunately, so little that they get in return. So when I started thinking about something, it really was focused almost exclusively on the women, and particularly the young women. One of the things that I noticed when I came on board here is that the people who are here now, the teachers especially, they've either been here relatively short time or a long time. And most of them haven't been anyplace else in terms of their work life. And so it's a, to use a phrase, it's a really cloistered environment. And I wanted just to do something that would open up a vision, if nothing more, to our staff, and again, particularly our young and old women, but our women of color. It was just something inside of me that said, I've been so blessed to have so many experiences in my relatively old life that I know most of these women will never be able to enjoy. And how can I bring that to them? I to some extent, obviously, I was thinking about the women in Africa also. I don't know a whole lot about the culture or about their experience, but I know that it's a relatively poor continent, period, and particularly in the areas that the women that the daughters serve, they like us, focus on service to the poor.
Right.
And so, to me, mirroring, trying to get a way of sharing what that sense of mirroring service to the poor was, no matter where you are, was important. Because I think that sometimes we feel here that we're the only ones who are doing it. And the way that we do it is the only way to do it. And it's important to realize that, as I said, you think you're poor.
Yeah.
And to give the employees predominantly a sense of we are far more blessed than we realized. I feel we are, just in terms of living through the poor and seeing through the eyes of the poor. It is humbling, but it is also such a blessing to realize that goodness makes you feel good. And so all of these things that I'm thinking and I'm feeling in my 73 years, I'm feeling maybe I can share that in some way with our community here, and make them feel like I feel, or help them to appreciate what mission means. And I think from everything I've heard, I accomplished
Absolutely. Yes,
that to some
this
extent.
aspect of your mission was 100% accomplished.
Yeah.
It was really
Yeah.
an incredible experience. And you see, I mean, both of us, they can't see us through the sound, or maybe they can hear it in our voices. Just have
Yeah.
these huge smiles because the experience was just so wonderful. And I know, and you and I have talked. I mean, I could talk to you all day. About
And we've
million
done that
things,
almost.
and we've done that sometimes. But I also just wanted to touch on, you and I have talked in the past too about the value of women of color, Black women in particular, being able to see that the life of a daughter of charity is a possibility for them.
Mm-hmm.
That in the U.S., in our province, the province of St. Louis, we are predominantly white, but that's not the story of the daughters throughout the world.
Yeah.
That just happens to be our demographic in this area. But to give people the opportunity to see that God calls everybody, anybody.
It's an opportunity not only to give voice, but also to give vision, to let young women hear. I'm not out to sell.
Right. Not a commercial.
But I honestly believe, and the reality is that the clergy is diminishing, both males and females. But I believe that there are those who truly, unquestionably want to serve God and serve the people of God, and maybe have not found a vehicle through which to do that. It wasn't that in what seems to be the picture of, like I said, proselytizing, but it was really a sense of here are some avenues for young black women, and not even young black women who are, as I like to call it, in the mission phase of their lives, who have maybe decided that I want to try to spend my life in some way giving back or giving to or giving unto, and to have some visual context for that. The interesting thing that I noticed about the women in Africa was that initially, you look at them and you think they're really young, and they really aren't as nearly as young as you think. But they could, and you see the joy with which they serve, and you can see it just resonating throughout their being, and that too was a topic of conversation among the women here when I had my sort of debriefing with them. They said, these women work with people with AIDS. They work with people who literally in sicknesses and things that have wiped out generations, and yet they still seem to have such a sense of joy in what they do. So all of this, again, it goes back to that desire to have women of color see alternatives. And part of that is seeing the potential for a life of service. Maybe not including the vows of chastity, but nonetheless.
Celibacy is not for everyone.
Right. But a way in which they can serve. And I think when I was saying earlier that I've got a lot of thoughts about where I think the church, specifically maybe the daughters, could start thinking in terms of how do we I consider myself a daughter to some extent, how do we preserve the legacy? And it has to be in some way, in my humble opinion, through some sort of affiliation, ministry or something with the lay women. Because I was just reading an article about the diminishing numbers of women religious throughout the world, and it's like by the year, I think it's at 2035, literally more than 75% of the religious women will be from third world countries, and they will not be white. And I know that there are initiatives now that will look at how do you begin to integrate those lay women into religious service, religious life in a way. I'm not sure that it's as widespread as some would like to see, but I think it's really something that we here in the U.S. ought to start thinking about in terms of service, because there are a lot of young women who are not necessarily in the mission phase in terms of their age, but in terms of their their life choices that they have gone through. They've gotten wonderful educations. They've been successful at what they thought they wanted to do with that education, and then they've run up against walls where they're just not happy. They're not satisfied. And more often than not, I see them going from high-paid jobs into not-for-profit jobs, which we know are not high-paid. And my thought is, if somehow we were able to capture that desire and the energy and the sense that they don't need to be paid $100,000 to do what they find joy in, that's a way of helping to preserve that legacy.
Yeah.
So.
And one of the things that I like about this particular podcast, In the Company of Charity, is it brings out that concept that you're talking about, that, you know, God does call people to be daughters of charity, but not everybody's called to be a daughter of charity. But God calls everyone to something.
Absolutely.
And finding that spirit, finding, you know, if you're called to the Vincentian charism, whether it be as a daughter of charity or as an affiliate or as, you know, a mission director,
Right.
or an employee in a sponsored work or what have you, that charism, that joy
That's
that
exactly.
is available to you in service of the poor and in seeing Christ in the poor and being able to connect in the community in that way, that's all the Vincentian charism.
All you have to do is look at any church, I don't Catholic or otherwise. Who are the servers? Who are the workers in the vineyard? You've got, of course, the priests and the associate pastors, and usually the music ministers. They're all men, but everybody else doing all the work in the church are women. And the businesses are starting to look at ways that they can capitalize on this labor out here that they know is out here that they've sort of neglected in some ways. And the church clearly is a business. So they ought to start looking at the house, you know, at the workers in the business, so to speak.
So you alluded to this a little bit earlier, sort of the what's next, and you have some ideas. Do you think that a continued relationship with the sisters in Africa or something similar to that is in the future?
Yes, I would like to think, and I'm almost reluctant to, but one of the things I would really, really love to see Sister Salvatrice is what my sense of an exchange program would be. Having daughters come here and spend time in our community in some way, shape, or form, and having our workers go there. And where it takes them, I'm not sure, other than for our women here, absolutely the exposure, the fact that so many of us talk about the motherland, and to see to really bring that into focus and into a reality for them. And more importantly, to start looking at what that kind of a relationship might mean on an ongoing basis in terms of building our community here as well as there. Like I said, at this point in time, it's sort of Francine's wish list and dreams and right.
Bubble up.
But I know that I'd love to see. And what, for lack of a better word, I'd say an internship sort of, or an exchange program. And I don't mean coming and staying for a year. I mean, really, it may be just for a few weeks or a month or something, but just to have that experience and that exposure. And where it began to percolate was during the initial session that I had with the daughters, where one of them was saying that she had studied to be a teacher But for the last 8 or 10 years, I think, she's been a bursar in the province. And she says, I asked her off to the side. I said, well, do you like that kind of work? Because finances and teaching, I don't know. People start thinking about numbers here, and they go, oh, my God.
You just serve where you're
But,
needed.
and essentially, that's what she said. She said, it's not a matter of liking or not liking, it's where's the need. And I was told initially that I would be there for a short period of time, and she said, well, now it's been 8 or 9 years, and it's something that needs to be done, and I think I do it well. But she said, here it's not like keeping the books for 50 people and making sure everything runs smoothly, like on a high level basis. It's enough for me. Sometimes it's a little too much. But I'm thinking, how would it help her if she came here and saw that kind of functioning in her even in the daughters here, spent some time to just have some exposure to that. And then because we, Marillac St. Vincent Family Services, are part of the daughter-sponsored work, there's 7 other sponsored works, and having the opportunity at various levels, because I think we're the largest with over 200 employees, and there's some with less than 25 employees, to have them to have access to that exposure at whatever level, and to give the American community, if I can put it that way, the American Daughters community, a sense of what serving Louise means themselves in terms of another culture. I don't know the extent to which the daughters themselves have taken the opportunity to look at what some of the other daughters in the other foreign countries, not just Africa, but what they're doing and how they're doing it, how they're preserving the legacy of Louise, and what lessons can be gleaned and utilized by us and by the other daughters throughout the world.
Well, one of the things that's so exciting for me is thinking about exactly that, because we do have some formal channels through which we share, global news and what's happening with the sisters here and there. But this experience just sort of stepped outside of that and said, we're just going to connect person to person, and it was so powerful and so beautiful. And I think something that just occurs to me really, and maybe this is a note to kind of wind up on, but St. Louise was so good at moving between two worlds.
Yes.
She and Vincent both being able to function at this high level, highfalutin kind of thing, and also being able to function really well with the country girls,
yes.
and helping people see each other, that we don't need to be separate, even if we function a little differently, or our style of speaking is a little different or what have you, but to be able to recognize that we're all God's children, and
Amen.
we're all part of the same world that is redeemed by Jesus. And so how do we see each other when we
Yes.
serve each other?
Yes.
And I think that you did that so remarkably well in this activity that you created, this opportunity that you created. So I'm incredibly grateful to have been able to even have this little part of getting to witness it and talk with you about it. And I know that the staff and leadership at Marillac St. Vincent has been just overjoyed, and we're so lucky to have you, Francine, our wonderful mission director. So I thank you for that and for everything that you do. Do you have any parting words that you'd like to kind of share to the Vincentian community at large?
I tell everybody and anybody who knows me, first of all, I'm Miss DePaul. I am a Vincentian in spirit and I hope in practice in terms of my life. But as I recently said to someone, I'm really getting to like that Lady Louise. I'm really getting to like her. because I'm getting to know her better.
So why don't we leave? That's a perfect note to end on. So thank you so much for your time, Francine. I
Thank
greatly
you.
appreciate it. It's been wonderful talking with you.
It's been wonderful talking with you.